Are you ready to become toxic person proof? Hey guys, Sarah K Ramsey here to help you find love and success after a toxic relationship so you can design a life you're actually excited about living.
Hello, everyone. I am here with Jennifer, who I actually worked with. We were trying to figure it out like a year and a half ago, a year ago, 2 years ago,
Yeah.
somewhere in that vicinity. And I am just so happy to talk to her. When you're working with someone privately, it's like, oh, they're just like a part of your life for so long and so intensely. And then it's like, like having one of your kids go to college or, like, come on, little birdie, fly out of the nest. And so I'm just thrilled to talk to her and see what changes she's been able to implement in her life since becoming a wondrous woman. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Hey, Sarah. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Oh, I'm happy to talk to you. So I'm just thrilled to be here. We've got our coffee going on opposite ends of the country and
Yep.
ready to chat. So, what has changed about your life? How do you feel different coming through the program and becoming who you are today?
It's a great question. Thank you. And thank you for having me on the podcast. I would say the number one thing that I have learned about myself since the program, and you learn this in the step, but I think, and I will get into this a little bit more with my background and how I was raised and those sort of things. But what I learned was to trust my intuition, which it was something I was never, ever taught growing up. I was always, I was raised by a very toxic mother, and I was always looking to her and others to tell me how I felt and what I needed to feel good. And I can't tell you how empty that leaves you feeling and how that exposed that leaves you to actually the people that the gentleman that I was in I don't know if I call him a gentleman, but person that I was in a relationship with that made me seek you out in the first place a couple of years ago. And so what it does is it really tears away your ability to trust that inner voice, that gut reaction that says, this is not good for you, or this is fantastic. You should trust your instincts and go for it. And that's how we keep moving forward. I still use this, and I've used this with my children when they're ready to give up and throw a fit. And I know we've all been there with kids.
Oh, yeah.
I say, even if we're failing at something, we're still moving forward. And that is the key. So it's not to say after Wondrous Woman that you're not still going to get bad news. Bad things are still going to happen.
Yeah,
sure. Life isn't perfect. And it's how you get up and deal with those things after you've failed and move forward. So if I can say anything, that is what has really catapulted me to keep moving forward. Because I have run into, and it is amazing after this course, how many people you realize are toxic. So
shocking. And not everyone is. I want to be super clear. Not everyone is toxic. And
yes, and not everyone is toxic. But even, it gave me retrospect and introspect to say, okay, here's my toxic behaviors too.
Absolutely.
Because of the way I was raised. And I'm like, ew, I have to get rid of these, and I realize I know how to regulate myself. And I can say when I have an instance, like recently I changed jobs, and I had been in a director of finance career for the last 2.5 years. And while I was in the program, I was at that job, and I went in and actually asked for a pretty extensive raise. And 2 seconds later I got it and I walked out, and I'm like, okay, so that just happened. And I moved forward.
Your new job is even more of a raise? Was it
yes.
30K? Did I see that on Facebook? Was it 30K?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm making well over 6 figures now.
So since starting the program, and let me just clarify this, because this happens a lot, and it seems like it sounds too good to be true, so it's like, okay, like, no, this really happened. And it does happen a lot. So with the original raise and with the raise since then with the new career, what was the career financial change since starting the program?
$75,000.
And I'm just like, that's real. And I see it happening all the time. And it seems, it would sound like I was lying if I told you that on your first phone call.
I know.
But I do see it over and over. And it's not, I have a client named Lisa. She calls me the success fairy. She jokes that I'm a success fairy. And I said, I'm just reconnecting wonderful women with themselves again.
Yep.
It's not me being a success fairy. Yeah, I teach you to stand up for yourself and ask for things you need and all that kind of thing. but it's you're the success fairy of your own life, right? Like that's what I want. That's what I want.
Yep.
And I will never, talking about trusting your intuition, I will never forget your email where you were saying like that I was in your head, and then there was a part in the program that I said, and now you're going to have to like, you know, learn to be on your own without me. And you were like, what?
I know, I was terrified. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this for myself.
But obviously you have done amazing.
Yes.
You've done amazing, and I'm just thrilled for you. So what other changes have you seen?
I actually, so this program catapulted me to really, you know, dig deep into my relationship with my mother, if that makes sense. And I want to say that from an aspect of a healing journey. And I know everyone's healing journey is different. And I want people to know, if you've been in a narcissistic mother, toxic mama drama situation, or if you're in one, you can heal and you will recover. You just have to find the right tools, you know, that are for you. And so I would say this program, recovering from the toxic relationship I was in, I absolutely recovered. I absolutely moved on from that and catapulted myself forward. That's, like I said, that's when you realize the other people that are affecting your life. And that really shined a light. And I realized it in my journaling. I go back and I read my journal when I was doing the program. I'm like, gosh, like you just opened up, like you hit something and it just opened up everything. And I don't want to say it's subconscious, but literally it was subconsciously, I was holding it back. Yes.
Right?
I
Like
was
it
living
you out of denial. Yes.
Denial. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, I am being treated like crap by my family. Like, how did I not see this? Like, why am I breaking my back to take 2 weeks off of work to drive me and 2 little kids 24 hours across the country to see people who can't even show up when I broke my neck in a car accident? And I'm like, I mean, that's just one example, you know?
And they made you feel bad about it. I don't want to say if I remember correctly, because I do remember the emails about sisters and moms and holidays and flipping it on you. And you're like, Sarah, am I the crazy one here? Like, they make me look like a mess. So they make it seem like it's my fault. I was like, you are not crazy. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what's happening.
And they still try to do it. Like
Sure.
So you just, it catapulted me. And part of that was educating myself. So I read, there's a book by Dr. Sarah Campbell It's Not You, It's Your Family. And if you are living in a situation with a toxic family, I highly recommend that book because it's life-changing, and it's life-changing for a lot of women, especially women, but even men who were raised by toxic mothers, because you don't really realize what's happening, and they are fantastic manipulators. It's like the men, if you're in a toxic relationship, they are fantastic manipulators. They're using the tools that they have to manipulate you to make you feel crazy. And that's how, like when I said before, they leave you exposed to people like that to come into your life. And it's because they've trained you that way. And I'm looking at it, and now I can see it from a 30,000 foot view, and I go, what in the world? Like, you know, why did I put up with this for so long? I was, 38 years old. I'm going, okay, so I'm finally, I want to say I stepped into my power big time. Is what I got out of the number 2 thing I got out of this. I stepped into my power and I owned it, and I said, no more. So they tested it again and again, did their normal stuff about holidays, never changed their behavior. And I said, I'm done. And what it was my birthday dinner last year. I went to lunch with my parents, and I did not have my children with, because I just said, I'm at work. I can meet you for lunch. Because basically I've cut off contact with them for the reasons of the fact that I said, here's my boundaries. I want to be treated with respect and care. And part of that is, if you're going to change plans on me, I would appreciate, a 2-week heads up. I would appreciate that you would consistently reach out to my children if you want a relationship, not just control. Such as you're the grandparents, FaceTime the kids once a week. Make the effort to do something consistent with them. I have yet to hear from them on that. But yet when they want to come out to Montana to see me, it's 2 weeks before, hammer, 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 text, call, written letter, threatening to take me to arbitration to see my children. And then they're here and they'll show up at my house unannounced, and then they leave, and it's text, call, another letter from my mother telling me how damaging I am and controlling I am, and how I don't understand how I'm so evil to my children and causing them long-term damage. And I'm going, this is coming from someone who can't even admit or ask the question why her own child refuses to talk to her, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm just shaking my head, because if you've not lived in a life like this, it just seems like it can't be. Like, why would a mother do that? Like, you're just like, but yeah, it's like, okay, yep, yep, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. and people, right? You know, and I have lots of friends, you know, and it's so interesting to note, like, when I would open up and say, oh yeah, well, my mother, and then I would say a story to people that I'm close with, my very close girlfriends, and they're like, yeah, that's not normal. Really? You know? Mm-hmm. And they even started saying, like, my best friend who, her and I have been through everything. So we've known each other since I was 20. We lived together in college and through grad school. And she's known it for years. She goes, I was waiting for you to kind of wake up. She goes, they've always been mean to you. And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah. She goes, but you're just one of those people. And some of us are, because we're strong, you know, women. I'm a little bit stubborn in some areas. Right. And you don't see it until you're ready. And that's another thing that your program does, is, like you said, you get us out of denial. And once you're out of denial and you can see the forest through the trees, it's like, yes. Oh, okay. And here I am. And so what it did, and you know, with Dr. Campbell's book, you know, I reached out to my therapist that I've seen for years. I've realized this about myself that I didn't know also, is I process situations, difficult situations and things in life, by speaking. So I have to talk myself through it. I have the tools from the program and from seeing her to walk myself through it, but I have to talk. And I want a sounding board that I trust. Yeah. So if my front, you know what I mean? So I will just walk through it and talk through it. And she's like, yes, you've made the right decision. And I'm going, okay. So, but that's critical. So it's critical to have those people in your court, especially when you're on your healing journey. And so I can say now, 2 years from now, I mean, after even Toxic Mama, you know, I'm good. I'm really good. I told you a little bit about this, but I found another woman who does neurofeedback, because what I realized after I delved deeper is the trauma, the emotional abuse, the long-term emotional abuse that my mother and you know, and quite frankly, my father, because he was her enabler, is still in her enabler. And my siblings, who were low to me for whatever reason, triangulation being number one with her, and manipulation. But yeah, it's a lot of trauma of situations that were not normal. Being 12 and having a 5-year-old little sister, a mother who she couldn't control her own emotions. And it's because of the way she was raised. And I want to make the point, like, I do have compassion and kindness for my mother because of the way she was raised and what happened. Because some people go, how can you not have a relationship with your mother? Because here's why. Because I have done the work. Mm-hmm. I have done the work. Do I appreciate my parents and thank them for getting me to 18 years? Yes. Thank you for feeding me, keeping me under a roof, and for most intents and purposes, keeping me safe, right? However, my mental health was not that right. So why I can say I love my parents. I love my mother dearly. She's my mother still. I have passion and kindness towards her. And I really hope that she gets better. I really hope that she will do the work someday, take responsibility, accountability, and do the work. But here's how I cannot have, because I can view her and have an adult relationship with people now, whereas before I needed her. You know what I mean? They get you to the point where feel like you need them all the time. Well, once you're healed, forgiveness can happen. So I forgive myself. I forgive myself for not knowing any better. And then I've forgiven her for not knowing any better, but it is not my responsibility as my own human being to even fix my family members. It is not my job. It is not my responsibility.
Nope.
And
that's
back over here. Yeah. And that's what I said to her. I said to him, I said to him back to that lunch that I had last year, that I said, no more. I said, when I was sitting there and I'm sitting across the table from my mother, my father is sitting to the left of me, and my mother is sitting there yelling at me in a restaurant, telling me that I was not emotionally abused, and she did everything that she could, and I'm an ungrateful bitch, and I caused so much trouble in this family, and I am a problem. And she looks at my father and she points her finger at him, and I'll never forget it. And she goes, you said you were going to tell her that she was not abused and she was going to believe it. You're not following through. Yeah. And I wish I could have recorded it, because it was, and I just sat there and I felt like an out of body experience, because I can tell you, once you're healed and you get to that point where you're like, this is not my circus, not my monkeys. Yep. And I sat there and it felt like an out of body experience. And I just looked at them and I just said, okay, well, I am done here. Thank you for the lunch. Thank you for the birthday card. I hope you both have a good rest of your day. And I got up and I walked away, and I have not seen my parents since.
But do you see, for the listeners, do you see the power in that? She did not get engaged and start yelling with them. Mm-hmm. She did not say, you can't do this to me, blah, 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 blah. Right. She did not go, you know, just like, okay, this is not okay. And I'm going to remove myself from the situation. That's where the real power is, because then they can't manipulate that. Yep. And I also, the people who are like, oh, I can't believe you don't have a relationship with your mother. I think you and I have talked about this, but there's a huge difference in forgiveness and access. You're happy to forgive her. You're not looking to give her access to you. You're happy to have compassion towards her situation and her childhood, but it does not mean you're happy to give her access to you. And just thinking about it in those terms, oh no, I'm very compassionate towards her. I just don't give her access to me to hurt me.
Yep. Right? And that's what I've had the talk with my sister-in-law. I've had that talk with my sisters. And why don't you talk? And it's the same reason why I have a twin sister. I don't talk to or see, because she's exactly like my mother. There is not enough things in the world that I could do for her that would ever be enough. And I learned that also because she was in a situation where she's always very needy, and it's always been the saying in my family, oh, poor Amanda. And one of my friends that I've met, once you become empowered, I want to say, you start attracting the right people in your life. And one of my girlfriends, Bonnie, she goes, well, why is Amanda so poor? And I'm like, I started laughing because I'm like, I don't know why, because she's technically not. And I'm like, that is a great point, and then when she called me because she was having bad cramps and she needed this and this, and I'm at work in a meeting with my CEO, and I didn't call her back within 30 minutes. I got a phone call from my mother telling me how poor of a sister I was. My sister needed me, and on and on and on. And then it was just, I'm like, the other families do not do this. Other families do not do this over a heavy period, I'm going, because I'm not taking care of her. Like, that was my rule. Like, I took care of my younger siblings. And if I didn't, I faced the wrath, And so my younger siblings were told, well, Jennifer's very controlling and stuff. That's just her personality. But it was my mother setting it up that way. Mm-hmm. And I'm not
absolutely, yes, because it kept you under control too, because you also had a job to do, and the job was to take care of everyone but you.
Yep. And I know this, and this is how I survived, being raised in that. Like, one of my therapists was like, I have no idea how you came out as well as you did, given what you've been through. And I mean, I don't want to go into everything because some of it's really deeply painful and I don't want to trigger anyone. And it wasn't physical abuse, but deep emotional abuse, swearing, name calling, knocking down doors, being chased, things, being told you're going to get killed, things that, 12 and under should not experience, right?
Or 94 and under, right? Like, no one should have to experience that no matter their age, but obviously protecting children first and foremost, obviously. Yeah.
But I want to get back to just, when I left that conversation with my parents. So it's not to say I had the tools to get up, and it was so empowering. I want to say that. But I did go to my car and I did sit there and I did a few deep breaths. And so this is what I want to say to the podcast audience is find, when you go through this, if it's a toxic, relationship, or if you find yourself, you have to recognize and know your triggers. So that would be the fourth thing that really resonated with me from the program is I had to figure out my triggers, and I had to take accountability for them. And I had to figure out a way to, I don't want to say control them, but find a way to deal with them in a healthy manner. Because because we all have gone off the cliff, right? The veritable cliff.
For sure.
And
Yes.
we and we lose our minds and we feel bad after we do it because it's not you. It's not you. You're triggered. You're having an emotional reaction. There's all these chemicals going on in your brain. Your body goes into fight or flight, and you do some stuff for it that you would not normally do or say. And what I've learned, and I took this, so there's some great coaches also out there that you can take stuff from, right?
Sure,
and that's that you apply in your own program. And so what I do is I took from Mel Robbins that it's that brain stop. So I take a deep breath. I can feel it, and you have to recognize it in your body. And this is another thing with long-term emotional trauma. Learn in your body where that trauma, where that trigger point is. Mine is in my gut and in my shoulders. Like I get really tense and my shoulders go up, and I never really realized it. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting triggered by this person. I need to take a step back. Or I'll say to myself in my head, I'll take a deep breath and I'll say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm triggered because they're doing X, Y, Z. And once I can explain it to myself, I calm down and I can put a mental boundary in place, I guess, finish the conversation and walk away I guess you could say positively, and end the conversation where they're like, she's great.
Yeah. And I also want to point out for anyone listening, because we think, oh, how can I not be triggered? And it's like, the triggers are your warning signs that there could be this is a possible toxic person. There's a crocodile around that's looking to bite. Your body recognizes that. And sometimes we're triggered and it's just our past. But many times we're triggered because it reminds us of something that toxic people do. And that's worth listening to. That's how you become toxic person proof, right? If you just, meditate or medicate all that away, you might, because you feel, I get the tension in my jaws, right? When it's just a real tension in my jaws. And it's like, when I notice that, it's like, okay, is there someone who's unsafe around? Is there a situation that's unsafe?
Yeah, and that speaks to your intuition. That goes back to your intuition. And that's where, when I said I didn't even know what my intuition felt like, because as a child, I was always told how I felt. And then I allowed the people, even in my marriage. So because I've been married and divorced, which was very hard, but I always looked to him to tell me how I was feeling. Mm-hmm. And he was okay leaving me empty. You know what I mean? And, speaking of somebody whose love bucket has a hole in it, oh my gosh,
yeah.
And it was just, it's like, you cannot ever do enough. But to speak to that with your intuition, I started out small and I said, okay, how do I feel about this food? What do I want to eat? And I would just imagine, what meal, and I would figure it out. And I would say, yes, okay, that's your intuition. When your body says, yep, this feels good, this is what I want to do, and pay attention to that and remember that feeling and follow through with that, because that is your God-given, right. Your God gave us that intuition skill to trust in that, to trust in our own bodies. And your body knows it. And most people that are raised by toxic parents and that have been in toxic relationships, we forget that skill. We forget to trust our intuition, our gut. And it's because we've been manipulated and trained not to do that, because we've been trained to search out those people in our life who are controlling us and want to manipulate us, to know how we feel. And that's not true. If somebody's trying to do that in your life, cut them out and simply say, I think it's healthy for me to step away at this moment in time. I wish you the best. And I look forward to hearing from you maybe in the future, because they're not doing you any sort of justice right now, especially if you're trying to heal. If you're in the program, it's hard to say, but I did lose some friends after the fact, because
everybody does. You hate to say that, but everybody does, because you just go, whoa, they're doing the same thing. I didn't realize it, but you're not lonely. I hear you say that, not everybody's toxic. I keep saying not everybody's toxic.
Oh, no. And that's what I want to tell you. And then I'm going to preface it with saying, I have actually doubled the amount of people that I can call friends. I mean, I still have my core. Yeah, I still have my core girlfriends. My ride or dies, right? But is what I call them, but that are good people. Like I had one of my girlfriends who's one of my very best friends now. She entered my life after the program, and I just met her by chance. And I'm going to tell you, and you're not going to believe me, but it will happen. And wonderful people will start to populate into your life, and you're, and
I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to say it didn't happen by chance. It happened because you were saying yes to things and putting yourself out there and getting out of your house. I want to give you a little more credit than you just gave yourself. Because it's like certain people, good things seem to just happen to, but it's like, well, what are they doing? Say yes to things. We talked about that. Say yes to things. Put yourself out there. Put yourself in situations and try new things, right? That's how you meet new people and meet new friends. And whatever it is, right? Like that's part of it.
Well, and I want to say like that prefaces like, when people are like, well, what if my intuition's saying it's scary, Well, but you have to determine like what level of scary it is. You know what I mean? Because is it you're just nervous and butterflies because you're experiencing something new, or are you, tense in the shoulders and gonna puke, right? I mean, those are the two different, because you have to just be able to distinct that, because people will say, well, I'm just too nervous to leave my house, because I mean, we've been there, like, oh my gosh, I'm a wreck, but you're not a wreck. You've been manipulated and treated wrongly by a lot of people. And so get out there. And that's what I was going to say. I'm still doing my horses, my kids, we team rope, we run barrels and poles, and we get out there and we're meeting new people. We've met new families that we're really good friends with. We have family here that we were just there last night roping and having dinner, and, there are support systems out there. So even if you feel like you have no one, get out there and you will find them. They will find you as well. And it's amazing how it occurs once you change that inner, I don't even know how to say it, that inner confidence, that inner dialogue with yourself, which is super important. And I saw something the other day that somebody posted, said, do not say anything to yourself that you would not say to a 2-year-old toddler.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So what advice, I always like, the final point to like ask people advice. And women are always coming to me and they're always wanting to shortcut the intuition process, right? Like, oh, well, if I want to date, can you just give me a list of red flags? And you just like, what on a dating profile, if they have this word or this picture, do we know they're toxic? Or, how do I know this person is a toxic friend? How many times should this, they want to shortcut that process. Not the women I work with usually. It's usually the women who don't end up working with me. Yeah. I'm like, or even, in the dating thing, like, well, can we just be friends for 3 months and then he's automatically safe? Or can someone else interview him and he's automatically safe, right? And there's such a fight to develop that intuition and trust in yourself. It's a shocking fight. I mean, it's a shocking fight because, even with the red flag list, I'm like, you put up with horrible bad behavior. Anybody would have known that was a red flag, but you went back for more. So I don't think the problem is a written list, right? It's talking yourself out of it.
You have to develop the intuition skill. And I would say your program is, for me, it's amazing how quickly you get people through all of these things. It's like, to me, it seems like it wasn't, there's a lot of work that's being done, and do not shortchange yourself. Do not rush the process, because if you do, you're going to miss a small, it's a critical step, but it's a small step. And it's specifically built for a reason, for a purpose, with every single step. And if you skip one, you're going to regret it. And so my biggest thing would be especially for the intuition, is hone that skill. Because even if you have that checklist in your head, I've been on multiple dates. I've been on some good dates, and I've been on some really terrible dates that we could laugh about. We were talking about the guys from Montana. They all like to hunt, fish, and that's pretty much it. So, but with that said, hone that skill, because my gut instantly told me whether I was going to, but where I felt safe or not with that person. And if I did feel safe, then I went on a second date. And so,
yes,
but sometimes these guys are really smart, and it took me 3 or 4 or 5 dates. And what I just said to this gentleman, and I said, he was just floored because I just said, I've really enjoyed our time together, but I don't feel like this is something I want to pursue. And the look on his face and his reaction was everything I needed to know. It just told me that my intuition was correct, if that makes sense. And
I want to point out something Jennifer said. She said 3 or 4 or 5 dates, not 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
Do you hear the difference in that statement? I mean, it's saving, the process works really quickly, but the years it saves you of heartache and dragging your kids through another bad situation, or even missing out on great opportunities or raises because you're crying in your bedroom about some guy who, bravo. And I kind of almost teared up when you told me that, because I was just like, oh, good. I always want to deliver on my promises, right? So that's really important.
Yes. And that's the point. Like, I would say, just if you take away anything from the program, it's that key intuition. And go out there into the dating world and know there are lots of good men still out there. I would say there's probably a less chance of that in Montana, but just because I've been on enough dates where I'm like, dear Lord. But he's out there. And, it's been 2 years, not even, almost 2 years. And in that time, I've built an online website business. I have reestablished my relationship with my children and helped build a support system for myself. Got a new career that's over 6 figures now, and I'm constantly improving. I don't want to say I'm constantly improving myself, but I love
No, you are constantly improving yourself. Own it. Yeah. I'm constantly improving myself.
I'm up leveling my game.
Yes.
And that's, like you said, I heard one of your podcasts, maybe it was just a Facebook Live that you did, but it's 50% expectation and 50%, empathy. And that's so true. Yes. I'm not here to be your mom. I'm not here to be, your caretaker. I'm not, it's like you show up the way I show up. And if they're not going to do that, then okay. Like I said, it was great to meet you. I enjoyed our time together, but I think this is not something I'm going to pursue. It's kind, it's empathetic, and it's just to say, I'm not going to pursue this very kindly. And what I realized is if I haven't met a guy yet where they've taken that well, and that just tells me my interest, and I will. But and absolutely I will. And that's where it is different too. It's like I'm happy with where my life is at right now. I don't need, I'm not out there searching for somebody to complete me because I feel complete myself, which is another good point. And so I'm just like, okay, is my life perfect? No. I mean, stuff happens. And I mean, stuff happens with kids. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And ex-husbands, dear Lord. And
the joy.
Oh my gosh. And he just is who he is. Like, it was so refreshing to get to the point where I'm just like, meh, whatever. I'm actually watching his dog for him this week because he's on a job. Yeah. And that's another thing that came from this program is my relationship with him actually got better because I wasn't taking anything that he was doing personally anymore. It was just like, that's who you are. And I removed that from my life. And I'm super proud of myself. The part where that, as moms, it hurts us is because you can see he's a good dad, but he's obviously missing, again, grace, kind, compassion. Like, here's what happened in your life, but here's your responsibility. I hope that on that, but he may never because he's a narcissist. Actually, he will not because he's been through, I think, 8 girlfriends now. Yeah, about 8 or 9. They figured it out after 6 months. I'm like, why did it?
We're pretty sure you're not the problem, right?
Yeah, I'm like, so they're smarter than they were smarter, or no? I'm like, no, they just didn't know. They knew better. They know better.
They had more data than you did too, right? They had more data. They had more data because there was you were already making the point.
I'm like,
thank you so much for coming on here and reconnecting. It's so good to hear your story. I mean, I kind of like geeked out on the phone with her when we got on here because I was just like, I used to know everything going on in your life and I know hardly anything now. How have you been doing? And it's just such a joy to hear your success, and congratulations on choosing you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on there's a lot of people who talk about their problems and not as many people willing to solve their problems. And you your own best problem solver and action taker, and the dividends of it's not just my program. I know you did my program and then you've done something, just who you are and you work. But I am very thankful my program, a lovely little piece of your puzzle. But just that choice of I will not stay here. And
choosing you.
Yeah.
Like you just said, you obviously, especially the women that have found you and in the program, like, and this is, I'll leave it with this, but choose you. Get to the point where if you're in that situation where you're not okay, where you're at in your life, choose you and don't stop until you feel like you have chosen yourself. Because you'll know if you're honest, and again, this goes back to that intuition point, if you're honest with yourself, and that's one of the hardest things that you learn in the program is the denial thing. And you're like, oh, some things are not nice and they're ugly and it's gross. And you're like, why? Just, you have to grieve that and feel that so you can move forward.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey of moving forward and becoming a wondrous woman. Tell everybody bye.
Bye, everyone.
Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah, and I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I know that there was something that you can take away to help you get past the past, get real about the present, or get serious about your future. And if I did my job, then hopefully it will help you with all three. If you are not in my Facebook group, Finding Love and Success After a Toxic Relationship, then consider this your personal invitation from me. I'm there live, there's tons of support, and most importantly, tons more information to help you on your journey to become toxic person proof.